Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. If you ask Harry Potter fans about their impressions of the films, many will answer cautiously neutral. The movie adaptations are loved, but they always raise questions. And yet one thing is hard to deny: some characters in the films turned out far more appealing than their book versions. Brighter, nobler, friendlier, or simply more likable. Today we'll break down who exactly benefited from the adaptation. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Draco Malfoy. Draco's arc is one of the strongest in the entire series. In the books, we see him almost exclusively through Harry's eyes, and therefore he remains an ordinary villain. For a long time, arrogant, rude, and blindly confident in the superiority of purebloods. However, the films tell a different story. Thanks to Tom Felton's brilliant performance, we see Draco's inner doubts, fears, and breaking point. The final installments of the franchise reveal him much more deeply as someone crushed by the expectations of his family and Voldemort's pressure. The books simply did not show this. That's why the movie version of Malfoy turned out not only more interesting, but also much more sympathetic. Number 2. Sirius Black. The cinematic Sirius is a true gift to fans. Thanks to Gary Oldman's refined yet emotional performance, the character became charismatic, wise, and incredibly devoted to his godson. But in the books, Sirius is more complicated. His selfishness, his jealousy of Molly Weasley, his desire to claim Harry as attention, his bursts of irritation, all of this made him ambiguous and at times not very pleasant. The films smoothed out these rough edges. Sirius became more noble, calmer, and a genuinely warm, light-filled character. Number 3. Amos Diggory. Book Amos is a contradictory figure. A loving father, yes, but also quite the braggart, who never misses a chance to show off Cedric's achievements. Furthermore, he is rather rude to Harry, especially in their first meeting. In the film, however, he's a completely different person, kind, open, and friendly. He immediately gets along with Harry and the Weasleys, and even supports Potter during the tournament. The screen made him softer, more humane, and a much more pleasant character overall. Number 4. Percy Weasley. The most surprising thing about movie Percy is his almost complete absence. In the books, he's one of the most unpleasant characters, ambitious, cold, and willing to turn his back on his family for a position at the ministry. His conflict with the Weasleys is a major plot point. But in the films, this storyline doesn't exist. Percy appears briefly and looks like a regular, diligent prefect. For those who haven't read the books, he's just a background red-haired guy, not one of the most complex and controversial members of the Weasley family. So the adaptation softened him beyond recognition. Number 5. Hermione Granger. Book. Hermione is smart, brave, brilliant, but also stubborn, sharp, and at times a bit of a know-it-all. Her teeth, her strictness, her excessive pedantry, all of this made her a real, living character. In the films, however, Hermione seems to have lost all her flaws. She is beautiful, calm, confident, and nearly perfect. Her sharpness, insecurity, and awkwardness disappeared, leaving only the image of a talented, kind, almost flawless witch. Not all readers like that, but it's impossible to deny that the movie version is far more attractive. Number 6. Narcissa Malfoy. In the books, Narcissa Malfoy slips in and out of the story like a shadow behind Lucius and Draco. Rowling describes her as a tall, pale woman with cold eyes, and for a long time that is all she seems to be. Another proud, pure blood, loyal to the Malfoy name. Her moments are brief, her emotions restrained, and her inner conflict barely visible. She feels like part of the atmosphere of the Malfoy household rather than a fully explored character. The films transform her in a single, unforgettable moment. Helen McCrory plays Narcissa with quiet tension, her voice trembling when she leans over Harry's body and whispers, "Is Draco alive?" When Harry nods, a spark of desperate hope flashes across her face. Then she lies to Voldemort. He is dead. The decision is immediate, reckless, and entirely driven by a mother's love. The scene becomes a turning point not just for the story, but for Narcissa herself. In that moment, she stops being a background aristocrat and becomes a symbol of defiance, courage, and the boundless power of a parent protecting their child. Number 7, Minerva McGonagall. In the books, Professor Minerva McGonagall stands tall as a pillar of order. She is precise, stern, and unmistakably fair. When she scolds Harry and Ron in Philosopher's Stone, her voice is icy with disapproval, a tone students fear but respect. Rowling writes her as the backbone of Hogwarts, yet her emotional range is limited. She is steady, reliable, and disciplined, but her story rarely gives her large, explosive moments. Readers admire her, but she remains a quiet force rather than a dramatic one. The films give her the spotlight she never fully received on the page. Maggie Smith transforms McGonagall into a character who is both formidable and delightfully sharp. Her dry humor lands with perfect timing, and her authority feels absolute. One of her most iconic scenes comes in Deathly Hallows Part 2 when she steps forward to protect Harry and faces Severus Snape. With a flick of her wand, she sends a blazing spell through the Great Hall. Her battle with Snape is fast, elegant, and electrifying, a duel that instantly cemented her as a cinematic legend. And then comes the line fans still quote with a smile. As she calls the stone soldiers to defend Hogwarts, she murmurs, "I've always wanted to use that spell." It's a moment that blends awe and humor, giving her a spark the books never fully tapped into. Film McGonagall becomes a warrior, a protector, and a quiet rebel all at once. Maggie Smith's performance adds charm, fierceness, and wit, turning a disciplined teacher into one of the most beloved heroes of the entire franchise. Number 8, Ginny Weasley. In the books, Ginny Weasley spends years hidden behind the noise of Hogwarts life. She is shy, quiet, and too often written as Ron's little sister. Harry barely notices her at first, even remarking in Chamber of Secrets that she barely spoke in his presence. Rowling eventually reveals her strength, her humor, her talent at Quidditch, her fierce independence. But it comes late, and her full potential feels compressed into the last few books. Readers sense there is a powerful character inside her, but she rarely gets the spotlight she deserves. The films take a different path. Bonnie Wright plays Ginny with calm confidence from the moment she appears. She walks through scenes with a straight spine and steady gaze, giving the impression of someone who knows exactly who she is. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, she leaps into battle at the Burrow, blasting curses with precision. Later, she stands beside the DA during practice, offering help and encouragement without a hint of hesitation. Her Ginny feels less like a side character and more like a young witch ready to stand on equal ground with the main trio. One scene captures this perfectly. During the battle at Hogwarts, film Ginny charges forward with the older fighters, wand raised, shouting for her friends to fall back. The moment isn't in the book, but it fits her so well that it feels natural. Yes, the romance with Harry still comes off a bit rushed, but the portrayal of Ginny herself, bold, skilled, and emotionally grounded, gives her a presence that the books only begin to explore. The films let her shine early, turning her into the strong heroine readers always suspected she could be. Number 9, Neville Longbottom. In the early books, Neville Longbottom stumbles through Hogwarts like a walking apology. He loses his toad, forgets passwords, and trembles every time Snape enters the room. Even Harry thinks of him as the boy who always got in trouble for something he couldn't remember. Rowling paints him as kind but fragile, a student defined more by mistakes than achievements. His courage flickers only in rare moments, like when he tries to stop Harry, Ron and Hermione in Philosopher's Stone, and even then McGonagall calls him brave, very brave, as if surprised he had it in him. The films, however, sculpt Neville into a true hero in slow, steady strokes. Matthew Lewis plays him with soft sincerity at first, shoulders hunched, voice shaky. But with each movie he stands a little straighter. His transformation is visible, physical, almost symbolic. By order of the Phoenix, he is no longer the scared boy hiding behind textbooks. He trains with Dumbledore's army. He bleeds. He refuses to give up. Lewis lets Neville's fear show, but he also lets us see the determination building beneath it. One unforgettable moment arrives in Deathly Hallows Part 2 when Neville faces Voldemort alone on the courtyard steps. In the book he shouts, "I'll join you when hell freezes over," and draws the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat with sudden, explosive courage. The film elevates this even further. Matthew Lewis stands surrounded by Death Eaters, shaking but unbroken. His voice cracks, yet he doesn't back down. When he swings the sword and destroys Nagini, the last Horcrux, the entire story pivots on his bravery. For a moment, he becomes the heart of the rebellion. By the end, Neville is no longer the forgetful boy mocked for melting cauldrons. He is a leader at Hogwarts, a fighter who protected the school when others fled, and a symbol of what quiet strength looks like. Matthew Lewis' performance makes the transformation feel earned and deeply human. The films capture not just his growth, but the idea that real heroism often comes from the ones no one expects. Number 10, Lucius Malfoy. In the books, Lucius Malfoy stands like a marble statue, polished, cold, and predictable. He sneers at the Weasleys, calls Hermione a filthy little mudblood, and walks through the pages with the same lofty disdain. Rowling writes him as a symbol of old pure-blood arrogance, but she rarely lets readers see the cracks beneath the surface. He is a villain, certainly, but a familiar type. Elegant, snobbish, and emotionally distant, with a little hint of inner turmoil. The films, however, give Lucius something far more compelling. Jason Isaacs plays him with sharp elegance at first, chin raised, cane tapping, voice dripping with superiority, but slowly lets fear creep into his performance. By Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, you can see hesitation in the way he answers Voldemort. You notice the stiffness in his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. It's no longer the perfect aristocrat speaking. It is a man terrified of disappointing his master. Isaacs adds layers the books only imply. One unforgettable scene comes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, when Voldemort forces Lucius to lend him his wand. In the book, the moment is brief, almost casual. Voldemort says, "Your wand, Lucius. I require your wand," and Lucius obeys. On screen, though, the moment becomes agonizing. Isaacs trembles as he holds out the wand. His eyes dart to Narcissa, to Draco, then back to the Dark Lord, as if silently begging for mercy he knows he won to receive. The proud patriarch collapses into a desperate servant. By the final battle, Lucius is barely recognizable. His hair is unkempt, his clothes rumpled, and all the arrogance has drained away. He clings to his family instead of ideology, pulling Draco close with shaking hands as if that is the only thing left worth saving. The films transform him from a polished, distant antagonist into a man shattered by the very power he worshipped. Thanks to Jason Isaacs, Lucius becomes not just intimidating but tragically human, weaker, more frightened, and infinitely more interesting. Number 11, Arthur Weasley. Arthur Weasley in the books is warm, curious, and endlessly fascinated by Muggle life. He asks Harry about rubber ducks with the enthusiasm of a child discovering a new toy. Yet Rowling often paints him as slightly absent-minded. Even Harry notices it in Order of the Phoenix, where the narration mentions that Arthur always seemed a little overwhelmed by the chaos around him. He feels kind, but not particularly commanding, a gentle background presence in the large Weasley family. In the films, Mark Williams transforms Arthur into something stronger. His smile remains soft, but his posture changes. He stands straighter, listens more carefully, and carries himself like a man who understands danger far better than he lets on. When he guides Harry through the Ministry of Magic, there is steel beneath the humour. Williams as Arthur is not confused or timid. He is perceptive, protective, and quietly brave. One scene that shifts his image completely appears in Order of the Phoenix, when Arthur is attacked by Nagini. The book describes the moment through Harry, his dream, writing that Arthur was struggling, bleeding, fighting for breath, a terrifying but distant image. The film, however, shows him desperately trying to hold off the snake, eyes wide with fear, yet refusing to give up. His injuries become a symbol of how much he is willing to risk. It is the first moment many viewers realized Arthur is not just a kind father, he is a fighter. From then on, movie Arthur feels like the steady heart of the Order. He comforts Harry with quiet wisdom. He stands beside Molly with gentle strength. He looks at his children with pride and with worry only a real father knows. Thanks to Mark Williams, Arthur becomes one of the most beloved adults in the entire series. Still sweet, still quirky, but now undeniably heroic. Number 12, Sybil Trelawney. In the books, Sybil Trelawney floats through Hogwarts like a wandering cloud of incense and mystery. She speaks in whispers, clutches her shawls, and predicts doom with theatrical seriousness. Most students roll their eyes. Even Harry observes that her voice was breathy and far too misty to be real, a line that captures how Rowling gently pokes fun at her dramatic nature. Trelawney feels eccentric, amusing, and slightly detached from the real world, a teacher more comical than compelling. But the moment Emma Thompson steps into the character, something shifts. Her Trelawney is still odd, still wrapped in layers of beads and prophecy, but she radiates a strange charm. Thompson gives her a soft tremble in the voice, a flutter in the hands, and a look in the eyes that suggests she truly believes in every word she says. When she warns Harry about the Grim, she does it with such earnest intensity that the scene becomes strangely delightful rather than merely ridiculous. The films also allow Trelawney brief flashes of genuine humanity. One unforgettable moment comes when Dolores Umbridge humiliates her in front of the entire school, confiscating her things and announcing her dismissal. Emma Thompson's expression, confused, frightened, and suddenly small, turns a comedic character into a vulnerable woman. In the books, the scene is present, but it doesn't strike as deeply. The film lingers on her trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, making the pain impossible to ignore. By the time McGonagall rushes to comfort her, viewers feel real sympathy, something the books rarely invited. Movie Trelawney becomes more than a quirky fortune-teller. She is a fragile, hopeful soul trying to hold on to her place in a world that doesn't take her seriously. Thanks to Thompson's performance, she transforms from a punchline into a quietly beloved character, still funny, still bizarre, but far more human. Number 13, Lavender Brown. Lavender Brown entered the Harry Potter universe as a fleeting background presence, a Gryffindor classmate often overshadowed by the central trio. Yet the moment J.K. Rowling placed her in the spotlight in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, readers discovered a character crafted deliberately as a comedic exaggeration. On the page, Lavender became a caricature of teenage infatuation, orbiting around Ron Weasley with wide-eyed devotion. Her behavior bordered on the absurd, and many readers reacted to her with frustration rather than affection. However, the film adaptations transformed this very exaggeration into an unexpected strength, gifting Lavender a charisma and comedic brilliance that elevated her from a running joke to an unforgettable part of Hogwarts life. In the novel, Lavender's obsessive behavior is portrayed with almost slapstick intensity. She clings to Ron with unrelenting enthusiasm, calling him One in a tone that sets Hermione's teeth on edge. Rowling writes, Lavender had now taken to calling Ron One, and Ron seemed to be responding with a gormless grin that made Harry want to roll his eyes. The exaggeration is intentional, yet the textual version of Lavender feels overstated to the point of irritation. The reader experiences her exactly as Hermione does, a loud disruption, a gaudy presence, an intrusion into what feels like the natural emotional arc between Ron and Hermione. Lavender becomes a symbol of teenage romantic excess, less a character and more a narrative tool. What the films managed to do was embrace the same exaggeration, but recalibrate the tone. Instead of presenting Lavender as merely overwhelming, actress Jessie Cave turned those traits into assets. Her portrayal maintained Lavender, as enthusiasm, but infused it with charm, comedic timing, and an expressive physicality that made her scenes genuinely entertaining. The character's exaggerated devotion to Ron became amusing rather than grating, and her dramatic personality became a vibrant piece of Hogwarts life. Lavender as energy no longer felt like an interruption to the narrative, but an essential contribution to its humor and realism. Jessie Cave approached the role with an understanding that Lavender's obsession came from a sincere, if immature, place. Her version of Lavender had a bright, breathless intensity that made her feel like a real teenage girl, swept up in her first major crush. Instead of reading as shallow, the character became relatable. Many viewers recognized shades of real adolescence in her behavior, the overused heart-filled notes, the lingering gazes, the bold declaration of affection without the emotional maturity to navigate its consequences. The books hinted at these layers but portrayed them with exaggerated minimalism, whereas the films allowed Lavender's emotional world to feel lived in. One of the most memorable cinematic moments that showcases this transformation occurs when Lavender draws a fogged heart on the Hogwarts Express window, tracing R+L inside it with blissful seriousness. This small visual touch captured in seconds the essence of her personality. It is not something explicitly described in the novel, yet it feels like a perfect extension of what Rowling wrote. This simple gesture made her infatuation visually delightful. Instead of feeling embarrassed for Ron, the audience laughs with recognition at the sheer intensity of first love. Lavender's sense of theatrics, which sometimes felt heavy-handed in the book, became a source of joyful charm. Another example comes from the hospital wing scene, where Lavender arrives after Ron, poisoning. In the book, she bursts in dramatically, exclaiming, "I came as soon as I heard," only to wilt at the sight of Hermione already by his side. The moment is intentionally uncomfortable. Rowling writes that Lavender sounded as though she had rehearsed the line, emphasizing her artificiality. In the film adaptation, however, Lavender's theatrical entrance is played as comedic tragedy rather than annoyance. Her crestfallen expression, exaggerated breathing, and confused hurt turn the moment into a humorous but sympathetic beat. The viewer laughs at the melodrama without disliking her for it. Lavender's on-screen personality is also enhanced by the visual contrast with Hermione Granger. In the book, Hermione's disdain for Lavender shapes the reader's perception. We experience Lavender almost exclusively through Hermione's irritation, which colors her every action. The film, however, shows Lavender independent of Hermione's perspective. We see her giggling with Parvati Patil decorating her notebooks or casting dreamy looks at Ron. These glimpses let Lavender exist as her own person, not simply an obstacle in a love triangle. The narrative expands outward, inviting the audience to see her beyond Hermione's emotional lens. In many ways, the film version of Lavender mirrors the necessary exaggeration of adolescence. Hogwarts is a school full of young wizards and witches navigating not only magical threats, but also the messy, awkward world of teenage emotion. Lavender embodies the chaos of that stage in life. Her dramatic gestures, loud affection, and glittering enthusiasm remind the viewer that Hogwarts is not just a battleground, but a place filled with normal adolescent struggles. In the books, this role is present but overshadowed by the seriousness of the surrounding plot. The films boldly embraced it, carving space for humor and lightness without detracting from the darker narrative threads. Another cinematic strength lies in how Lavender's wardrobe and visual design emphasize her role. The costume department gave her bright, soft pastel colors, headbands, and whimsical accessories, which created a visual identity distinct from Hermione as practical clothes or Ginny Weasley, sub-understated style. Lavender became instantly recognizable, and her presence on screen always carried a burst of vibrant energy. These aesthetic choices contributed to the character transformation, adding layers of expression that were not available through prose alone. Jessie Cave's performance also introduced a physical comedy that the books could only hint at. Her exaggerated size, the way she leans into Ron with dramatic flourish, and her determined yet awkward attempts to catch his attention all play into a comedic rhythm reminiscent of classic British humour. Lavender became more than her lines, she became movement, expression, timing. Even those who initially disliked the character in the books found themselves smiling at her film portrayal because the comedy felt intentional, affectionate, and humanizing. Number 14, Luna Lovegood. Here is your 1,300-word, 15-paragraph editor-in-chief style text about how the Harry Potter films improved the character of Luna Lovegood. Clear, artistic, narrative, detailed, with examples, quotes, and no introduction or conclusion. Luna Lovegood entered the Harry Potter universe as a peculiar glimmer on the edge of the story, a presence almost too delicate to be noticed by characters who lived in a world consumed by conflict. Readers first met her in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, described as a girl with straggly, waist-length, dirty blonde hair and protuberant eyes that gave her a perpetually surprised expression. She was strange, dreamy, and often dismissed by her peers who called her loony. Yet Luna's whimsical detachment masked a deep emotional intelligence. In the books, not every reader saw that immediately because her oddities dominated the surface. When the films finally brought her to life, they revealed a richness that had been present all along but hidden like a secret page between the lines. The cinematic transformation began the moment Evanna Lynch stepped onto the screen in 2007. Her Luna was not simply an interpretation, she felt like a discovery. Lynch's soft, breathy voice carried a calm certainty that made every sentence sound like a prophecy. She delivered lines that in the book could have seemed silly with a serene wisdom. When she mentioned creatures such as the crumple-horned snorkack, the film didn't reduce her to a joke. Instead, her tone made it seem as though the rest of the world lacked imagination. It was as if Luna existed on a slightly different wavelength, one that the audience instinctively wanted to tune into. A powerful example of this shift comes from the scene after Sirius Black's death. In the book, Luna speaks with Harry in a quiet corridor, telling him she can see Thestrals because she witnessed her mother's tragic accident. She says, "It's not as though I never think about it," a line simple but meaningful. On the page, this moment is poignant yet brief. In the film, however, the interaction turns into a small masterpiece. Lynch's delivery is gentle, reflective, offering comfort without trying to erase Harry's grief. Her expression radiates empathy, a healing force that feels almost magical. This is where many viewers realize she wasn't comic relief, but the emotional anchor Harry didn't know he needed. Luna's gentleness in the films carried a kind of quiet heroism. Her courage was never loud, and the movies emphasized that by giving her moments where stillness became strength. When she casually explained to Harry that things we lose have a way of coming back to us in the end, she wasn't just offering hope about his missing possessions. She was speaking to the larger themes of loss and rediscovery that shape the entire series. The films allowed these layers to surface in a way the book sometimes hid behind her eccentricities. This shift helped audiences appreciate the depth of Luna, philosophy, a blend of honesty and innocence, rare among the war-scarred characters. Luna's wardrobe also contributed to her cinematic glow. Costume designer Gianni Temime crafted outfits that visually echoed Lynch's performance, soft, whimsical, and ethereal. Her radish earrings, cork necklace, and colourful, mismatched patterns appeared in the books, but on screen they became an extension of her aura. Viewers saw Luna not as the weird girl, but as someone unafraid to be fully herself in a world obsessed with conformity. Her clothes became a quiet rebellion, a symbol of individuality. Without a single dramatic speech, Luna embodied resistance against both Voldemort's darkness and Hogwarts' everyday cruelty. The films expanded Luna's presence subtly but effectively. One of the strongest examples appears in Harry Potter, and the half-blood prince when she finds Harry under his invisibility cloak and invites him to Slughorn's party. The moment isn't in the book, yet it fits Luna perfectly. She doesn't flatter or pressure him. She simply says she would enjoy his company. Harry's acceptance of her invitation becomes a turning point, a sign of his growing respect for her. This addition showed audiences how her authenticity naturally drew people toward her, proving she wasn't an outsider by necessity, but by choice. The film version of Luna also gave the viewer space to breathe. In a story filled with escalating danger, she acted as a gentle pause between storms. Her scenes didn't slow the narrative, they recalibrated it. When Harry felt lost, Luna often brought him back to himself without imposing her worldview. She reminded him of humanity, softer emotions, compassion, wonder, trust, qualities that war threatened to erase. Her presence made the darker moments feel even darker, simply because she reminded us what was at stake. One of Luna's most memorable cinematic moments came during Bill and Fleur, Wedding in Deathly Hallows, Part 1. She appears like a beam of pale light, her silver dress sparkling, her voice calm as ever. She notices Harry disguised as Barney Weasley and simply says, "Hello, Harry." The line is delivered with such serene certainty that viewers understood something profound. Luna saw people for who they were, not for what they pretended to be. This insight, latent in the books, became unmistakable in the films, thanks to Lynch's intuitive performance. When the war intensified, Luna's bravery shone with quiet clarity. After being kidnapped by Death Eaters and held in Malfoy Manor, she did not lose her softness. The films showed her standing beside Ollivander, comforting him with gentle words. The book describes her as calm and reassuring, but the screen magnified this into a defining moment. She kept her tenderness intact, even in captivity, a stark contrast to the cruelty surrounding her. Her resilience reminded audiences that true strength can be silent, compassionate, and unwavering. Number 15, Argus Filch. Argus Filch is often remembered as the shadow moving along the stone corridors of Hogwarts, a man whose very presence made first-year students clutch their books tighter. Yet while J.K. Rowling portrayed him primarily as a bitter squib with a penchant for punishment, the films transformed him into a far more layered character thanks to the expressive performance of David Bradley. In the books, Filch's menace came from his absolute loyalty to discipline. When Hermione finds the list of his confiscated objects, she reads names of items that had clearly been treasured by generations of students. This moment reinforced the description the narrator once gave. Filch loved detention more than any teacher alive, a line that painted him as the embodiment of petty tyranny. But in the cinematic adaptation, the same obsession evolves into a tragicomic trait, exposing the loneliness and frustration that defined his existence long before Harry Potter arrived under the Sorting Hat. One of the most striking differences lies in the way the films frame Filch's relationship with Hogwarts itself. In the novels, he appears almost fused with the rules of the castle, a character built from the same stone as its walls, unmoving and cold. He reacts with fury when students break curfew, when mud stains the floor, when Peeves performs his usual chaos. But this rage is rarely accompanied by vulnerability. The movies, however, gift him physical comedy that makes his faults oddly endearing. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, His frantic run through the corridors while searching for intruders becomes less a moment of tension and more an illustration of a man who desperately clings to order because it is the only source of control in his limited world. Another addition that deepens Filch's portrayal in the films is the humour interwoven into his otherwise grim personality. David Bradley gives him a ragged, almost skeletal gait which becomes exaggerated during high-pressure moments. In one memorable shot, he tries to sprint after Harry and Ron when they arrive at Hogwarts in the flying Ford Anglia. His limbs flail, his coat whips behind him, and his frustration is as comical as it is genuine. The book describes Filch's temper as simmering just beneath the surface, ready to burst at the smallest provocation, but the film translates that simmer into physical expression. Bradley's twitching expressions, his narrowed eyes and his muttered complaints deliver a performance that adds dimension to a character who could have remained a simple obstacle in the student's path. The films also humanize Filch by emphasizing the restrictive life of a squib working in a magical environment, although Rowling reveals in Chamber of Secrets that Filch is a squib, a non-magic person born to wizarding parents. The books rarely linger on how deeply this condition torments him. The films hint at it more subtly, for instance, when he stands by helplessly while the professors repair the damage caused by the basilisk or the students. Mischief. His expression displays a longing that cannot be articulated through words. His life is a constant reminder of what he cannot do. That helplessness shadows every comic moment, turning what should be mockery into sympathy. Mrs. Norris, his ever-present companion, becomes a symbol of that loneliness. In the books, the cat is described as scrawny, dust-coloured, and almost as disliked as Filch himself. She serves as his eyes and ears, the only creature who seems to understand him. But in the films, her appearances emphasize a surprising tenderness in Filch. When he lifts her gently after she is petrified, the grief written across his features conveys a connection rarely acknowledged in the novels. Rowling's narrative mentions that Filch, its face worked horribly when he feared she was dead, yet the written description allows distance. On screen, it becomes devastatingly real. Moreover, the film version of Filch is much more than the angry man chasing after students. His comedic timing gives him a kind of presence that fills every frame he inhabits. In Goblet of Fire, when he fires the cannon to open the Triwizard Tournament ceremony prematurely, Bradley lets his excitement overpower him, creating a moment that stands out in a film filled with darker tones. His nervous stance, combined with the unintended explosion that sends everyone jumping, adds to the sense that Filch often misjudges his surroundings, not because he is foolish, but because he is trying too hard to perform a role he was never outfitted to fill. Another layer emerges during Umbridge's reign. In the books, Filch readily supports her campaign of strict punishment because it aligns with his long-standing desire for harsher discipline. He dreams of hanging students by their ankles, a fantasy he never quite hides. Rowling depicts him as rubbing his hands in glee at the new authority Umbridge affords him. Yet the films emphasize not cruelty, but a sort of eager loyalty, as if Filch finally feels valued by someone in power. Bradley plays these scenes with a childlike obedience that reveals his deep craving for recognition. Rather than appearing sadistic, he becomes pitiable, a man who has been overlooked for so long that even twisted validation feels like salvation. This traces directly into the most iconic cinematic shift, Filch's role during the Battle of Hogwarts. In the novels, he participates only marginally, mostly escorting Slytherin students out of the castle, but in the film, he charges through the Great Hall carrying a small makeshift cannon, his face set with determination. The shot lasts only a moment, yet it upends everything the audience previously assumed about him. The man whose life was defined by sweeping floors and chasing children now stands ready to defend the only home he has ever known. His appearance is humorous, the weapon is far too large, his stance awkward, but the bravery is unmistakable. It invites the viewer to acknowledge that Filch, despite his faults, belongs among the countless defenders of Hogwarts. Number 16, Fleur Delacour. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, Fleur Delacour, a character introduced during the Triwizard Tournament in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, is initially portrayed with a distinct and somewhat superficial persona. She is a French beauty, a renowned champion in the tournament, with a polished exterior that causes others to form an instant judgment of her. Fleur's allure and confidence are undeniable, but her character is, at first glance, that of a stereotypical diva, distant, vain, and perhaps too focused on her own beauty. Her relationships, particularly with Bill Weasley, seem to mirror the allure of someone who might want to marry a hero rather than someone with true emotional depth. The reader wonders, does Fleur genuinely love Bill? Or is she simply drawn to the idea of being with someone revered, someone who embodies the very essence of the kind of person she, as a triumphed and celebrated wizard, should be with? Fleur's early depiction in the book leaves much to be desired in terms of emotional complexity. Her arrival at Hogwarts as a participant in the Triwizard Tournament is nothing short of spectacular. The girls of Hogwarts whisper in awe about her beauty, and even the boys seem entranced. Yet when the focus shifts to her interactions with the Weasley family, Fleur's portrayal becomes less than flattering. Molly Weasley, a maternal figure with her own strong opinions on family and manners, is not at all charmed by Fleur's high-maintenance attitude. Her cool demeanour, especially in relation to the Weasley family, feels distant and even disrespectful. Fleur's self-assurance is, to some, not only a sign of strength, but an irritating trait, leading the reader to question whether there is substance beneath the surface, or if she is merely playing a part. In the book, Fleur's relationship with Bill seems unlikely and shallow. Bill, a kind and brave man, falls for Fleur after the tournament, but Fleur's attraction to him seems somewhat contradictory. Bill, as the eldest Weasley son, is depicted as a caring, intelligent wizard, yet Fleur's feelings for him seem more rooted in his heroism than in anything deeper. When the reader first encounters their budding romance, the idea of Fleur loving him for his character is difficult to grasp, as their relationship is developed quickly and lacks the depth expected from such an important bond. Moreover, Fleur's background as a beauty pageant-worthy witch from a prestigious family of wizards raises questions of whether she is more concerned with being married to someone famous and heroic rather than truly being in love with Bill for who he is. However, when we turn to the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Fleur Delacour undergoes a remarkable transformation. In the movies, Fleur is not portrayed as the stereotypical, vain and superficial beauty, but instead as a strong, noble, and compassionate character who is deeply in love with Bill. In fact, Fleur's character in the films is significantly more relatable and engaging than in the books, especially in terms of her emotional depth and moral integrity. One of the most striking moments in Fleur's film portrayal is when she chooses to stay with Bill after he is attacked by Fenrir Greyback, a werewolf. Despite his disfigured appearance and the lasting consequences of the attack, Fleur remains steadfast, vowing to stand by his side. This scene stands as one of the most powerful and poignant in the entire saga, showing that Fleur, his love for Bill, is genuine and unwavering. She does not view him as an object to be admired for his heroic nature, but as a person she truly cares for, regardless of how his physical appearance has changed. This powerful moment in the films contrasts sharply with the version of Fleur in the books. In the novels, Fleur is often seen as more self-centered, and her emotions seem more conditional. Her attraction to Bill, while real, initially comes across as more superficial, and her devotion to him is not as clearly shown. The books suggest that Fleur's feelings for Bill may stem in part from his connection to the Weasley family and his status as a hero, but the films provide a much clearer sense of her unconditional love and loyalty. In Half-Blood Prince, Fleur's transformation is complete. She is no longer a glamorous, superficial character, but rather a strong, mature woman who stands by the man she loves, even in the face of adversity. Another pivotal moment in Fleur's character development in the films occurs during the final battle at Hogwarts. In the book, Fleur's role in the battle is somewhat minor. She participates, but her involvement feels secondary to the grander scale of the fight. However, in the movie, Fleur is depicted as actively engaged in the fight against the Death Eaters. Her bravery and sense of duty are emphasized, and she is shown working alongside the Weasley family to protect those they love. The film version of Fleur is not simply a passive participant in the chaos, but a proactive force in the fight for good. Her relationship with the Weasley family is no longer one of tension and judgment, but one of mutual respect and loyalty. The movie adaptation elevates Fleur's character by providing a clearer sense of her motivations and feelings. While the book version of Fleur is often seen as an enigmatic and somewhat aloof character, the films take the time to show her in more vulnerable and human moments. She becomes a character we can empathize with, one who has the courage to love deeply and face the challenges that come with it. In the books, Fleur's development is somewhat subtle, and her emotional growth is not as fully explored. The films, however, give her more screen time to showcase her transformation from the proud, somewhat aloof Triwizard champion to a loving fiancée and eventually a devoted wife. The films also show Fleur as someone who is both strong and gentle. She does not conform to the typical damsel in distress role, nor is she reduced to the one-dimensional beauty that often accompanies characters like her in fantasy literature. Instead, Fleur is portrayed as a complex character with layers of vulnerability, strength, and compassion. The films highlight her ability to maintain her composure and dignity, even in the most trying of circumstances, making her character more relatable and grounded. Her decision to stay with Bill despite his injuries reflects a profound strength of character that the book version of Fleur lacks. In the films, Fleur is not just a beautiful face, but a woman of substance, someone who values love and family over superficial appearances. In the end, the film version of Fleur Delacour is a far more dynamic and beloved character than her literary counterpart. While the books present Fleur as a character who may appear shallow or distant, the films elevate her into a strong, noble, and compassionate individual who is deeply in love with Bill Weasley. The scene in which she refuses to leave him after his injury is a defining moment for Fleur, as it shows her strength, loyalty, and devotion. This moment in the films adds a depth to Fleur's character that was lacking in the books, transforming her from a mere pretty face into a woman with a heart of gold. Her portrayal in the films, with its emphasis on emotional growth, bravery, and true love, gives her a place among the more heroic and admirable characters of the series. Number 17, Peter Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew is a character who has long been viewed as one of the more pitiful figures in J.K. Rowling Harry Potter series. In the books, he is depicted as a cowardly, snivelling traitor, a man whose actions caused the deaths of Harry, his parents, all while living in the shadows of his more powerful friends. His betrayal of Lily and James Potter has haunted him throughout the narrative, and while his character is meant to embody the epitome of selfishness and cowardice, there was a certain flatness to him in the pages of the novels. While it is easy to look at Pettigrew's betrayal of the Potters and view him as almost cartoonish in his weakness, is when the character is brought to life on screen that the complexity of his personality begins to emerge. In the films, especially under the performance of actor Timothy Spall, Peter Pettigrew is transformed into a figure who is deeply disturbing yet strangely human. He is still the same character from the books, a treacherous individual with a sad and pathetic life, but the physical portrayal adds a layer of terror to his character that was only hinted at in the books. In the films, Pettigrew is no longer just the weakling hiding in the shadows of others. He becomes a living, breathing presence whose cowardice is palpable. Every moment he appears on screen, the viewer feels an increasing discomfort, a tangible sense of unease that makes him one of the most unsettling figures in the series. His presence demands attention, and not in the way that a villainous figure commands respect or fear, but in a way that suggests something much darker. Timothy Spall's portrayal of Pettigrew brings the character's weakness to the forefront, but it does so in a manner that avoids making him a mere punchline or one-dimensional figure. Pettigrew's physicality is transformed in the films. He no longer appears as just a trembling man with a rat's tail, but as someone whose fear is so ingrained in him that it shapes his every move. This is a person who cowers in the presence of others, who will betray anyone if it serves his own selfish ends. But what makes his betrayal so disturbing is the realism that Spall injects into the character. His mannerisms are not those of a villain in a grand, classical sense. They are the mannerisms of a broken man who is unable to face the consequences of his own decisions. This is a person whose cowardice is so deeply ingrained that it becomes his defining trait. What is particularly chilling about the film's depiction of Pettigrew is how they emphasize his humanity. There is nothing overtly monstrous about him, and that's what makes his character so terrifying. In the books, we see him as a weak figure, but we never feel his fear in such an intense, physical way. The films make his fear a tangible presence. There's an almost animalistic quality to him, as though he is constantly scurrying to avoid punishment, looking for any possible way to escape responsibility. And yet this instinct to flee, this overwhelming need to survive at any cost, makes him more human than the more overtly malevolent characters. It is his cowardice that makes him relatable in a way that is disturbing. We've all had moments in our lives when we have been afraid to stand up for what is right, when we've been tempted to save ourselves at the expense of others. Pettigrew takes that fear to an extreme, to a place where he is willing to sell out his best friends, his family, for his own survival. In one key moment of the films, we see Pettigrew's full betrayal come to light. Harry, Ron, and Hermione have been led to believe that Sirius Black was the betrayer of Harry's parents. But as the truth emerges, we find that it was Pettigrew who was the true traitor all along. In this moment, the audience sees the full extent of his cowardice. Rather than stand and face the consequences of his actions, he immediately turns to escape. His rat-like tendencies take over, and he scurries away, seeking any possible means of avoiding retribution. It's in this moment that the audience discomfort with the character reaches its peak. There is no grand confrontation, no heroic struggle, just a man so terrified of facing his past that he would rather disappear than acknowledge the consequences of his betrayal. This sense of cowardice permeates every scene in which Pettigrew appears. Spall's portrayal of the character is not one of overacting or dramatization, but one of subtlety. Every flick of his eyes, every twitch of his hand, every hesitant step he takes speaks volumes about his character. He is a man trapped in his own fear, unable to break free from the shadow of his past. And yet this fear is not something that makes him pitiful in the way that some might expect. Rather, it becomes a powerful force, one that makes the audience keenly aware of the weight of his actions. Pettigrew's fear is not a source of comedy, but a source of horror. It's unsettling to see someone so utterly incapable of standing up for themselves, someone who has so completely surrendered to their own cowardice. What makes this portrayal of Pettigrew so effective is how it taps into something universally human. Fear is an emotion that everyone can understand, and in Spall's performance, we see how it can erode a person's sense of morality and humanity. Pettigrew's fear is so consuming that it strips him of any real sense of loyalty, love, or friendship. In the book, we know that Pettigrew was once a friend to James Potter, a member of the Marauders, but his actions throughout the series make it clear that these bonds meant nothing to him in the end. It's his survival instinct that drives him, and it leads him to betray the very people who once trusted him. In the films, this betrayal is made even more chilling by the way that Spall's portrayal emphasizes the character desperation. In the books, we understand that Pettigrew's betrayal was a matter of survival, but it's only in the films that we see the true depths of his fear. His every action is governed by his desire to escape punishment, to avoid the wrath of those who would seek justice for his crimes. In the moment of his greatest betrayal, Pettigrew chooses to save himself, to take the path of least resistance. He does not fight for his friends, does not stand up for what is right. He simply chooses to survive. What makes this transformation from page to screen so powerful is how it brings Pettigrew's weakness to life in a way that is far more unsettling than the book portrayal. In the novels, we know that Pettigrew is a coward, but in the films we feel his fear in a visceral way. Spall's portrayal of the character forces us to confront the reality of what it means to be driven by fear, to be so consumed by self-preservation that one is willing to betray everything and everyone they once cared about. The result is a character who is no longer just a flat, weak traitor, but a man whose fear is so all-encompassing that it becomes the driving force of his existence. And in this, the films have made Peter Pettigrew a far more complex and disturbing character than he ever appeared in the pages of the books. Number 18. Kingsley Shacklebolt. In the Harry Potter books, Kingsley Shacklebolt is often an enigmatic presence. While he is certainly described as a formidable wizard, a skilled auror, and a loyal member of the Order of the Phoenix, his character tends to remain in the shadows. He is there when needed, contributing to the fight against dark forces, but he does not take center stage in the narrative. His role is one of a, quote, 26, but he doesn't possess the same narrative depth as figures like Harry, Hermione, or even the more prominent members of the Order such as Sirius or Lupin. Kingsley is a reliable, efficient figure, but the books never quite give him the level of character exploration one might expect for someone so important to the war effort. However, in the film adaptations, Kingsley Shacklebolt's character is elevated, and it is this transformation that makes him one of the standout characters in the movie series. In the books, Kingsley is described as a competent and capable auror, a man who is steadfast and dedicated to the fight against Voldemort. But in the films, particularly in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Kingsley takes on a more prominent, almost prophetic role. The character's presence is expanded and the filmmakers give him a certain gravitas that is lacking in the books. He becomes more than just a reliable ally. He becomes a symbol of order and authority, the voice of reason and strength in a world that is increasingly descending into chaos. One of the most striking changes is the transformation of Kingsley into a charismatic and authoritative leader. The books never fully explore Kingsley's ability to inspire others, but the films present him as a man who embodies calm authority, speaking with confidence and wisdom. His role as the voice of the Ministry's resistance is emphasized, and his speeches carry a weight that elevates him from a supporting character to a leader who commands respect. In the movie, Kingsley's role becomes central to the notion of leadership in the wizarding world. He is no longer a background figure. He is the voice that reassures the public during times of uncertainty, providing stability in the face of Voldemort, his increasing dominance. For example, in the films, Kingsley's most notable moment occurs when he addresses the nation during the events of, quote, 29. As a former Minister of Magic, Rufus Scrimgeour is portrayed as somewhat of a bureaucrat in the books, someone who is more interested in power than the greater good. Kingsley, by contrast, is the figure who steps into the breach, providing hope and strength when it is most needed. The filmmakers give him an almost prophetic quality, with his words ringing with the certainty of someone who knows what must be done. He speaks with the confidence of a general preparing for battle, but also with the wisdom of someone who has seen the horrors of the past and knows the importance of unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The voice that Kingsley gives to the resistance is unmistakable. His speeches in the films are delivered with the kind of authority that would belong to someone who commands armies rather than a mere supporter of Harry's mission. Kingsley's words seem to come from a place of profound understanding and experience, echoing the wisdom of a seasoned leader who has fought many battles. The way he addresses his fellow wizards is both inspirational and sobering, reminding them of the seriousness of the situation and urging them to stand firm in the face of darkness. His presence on screen immediately adds a sense of weight and dignity to the narrative. A particularly powerful example of Kingsley's leadership comes during the Battle of Hogwarts. In the books, Kingsley's role is primarily that of a fighter participating in the battle alongside his fellow members of the Order. But in the films, his character is given a more prominent role as a general who leads the fight against Voldemort's forces. His actions and his words carry more significance, making him a central figure in the defense of Hogwarts. While the books focus more on the action and the individual heroics of characters like Harry, Ron, and Hermione, the films take the opportunity to give Kingsley the kind of leadership role that is befitting of someone with his experience and wisdom. The movies also present Kingsley with a sense of calm composure in the face of danger. This is especially evident in his interactions with the other characters, in contrast to some of the more emotional, panicked reactions that other characters display. When confronted with the realities of the war, Kingsley remains unflappable. He is a man who knows the stakes and understands what must be done, but he is never swayed by fear or uncertainty. He is a figure who represents stability in the midst of chaos, providing reassurance to both his allies and the audience. His demeanor is a reflection of his character, his growth, and evolution in the films, highlighting his transition from a mere supporting character to one of the key figures in the fight against Voldemort. Another significant change between the books and films is the visual representation of Kingsley. In the books, Kingsley's physical appearance is described in relatively simple terms. He is a tall, imposing figure, but his features are not given the same level of detail or description as some of the other characters. In the films, however, Kingsley is portrayed with a sense of dignity and strength that is immediately apparent. His appearance conveys the sense of a man who is both wise and experienced, but also physically formidable. The choice of actor, played by George Harris, adds to the character his sense of authority and gravitas. Harris brings a quiet strength to the role, making Kingsley a memorable and imposing figure on screen. The filmmakers also give Kingsley moments that emphasize his personal commitment to the cause, especially his loyalty to Harry and the Order. In the books, Kingsley's role is often that of a background figure, someone who is essential to the fight but does not take center stage. In the films, however, Kingsley's dedication to Harry and the Order is given more emphasis, with the character standing by his friends and allies in the darkest moments. His loyalty to Harry in particular is evident in the film depiction of his support during the final battle. While other characters are preoccupied with their own struggles, Kingsley is shown to be firmly on Harry's side, offering him guidance and support when it is most needed. Kingsley's transformation from a relatively minor character in the books to a heroic, charismatic figure in the films is one of the most successful and beneficial changes made in the film adaptations. His presence in the films gives the audience a figure of wisdom and authority who can provide balance in the midst of chaos. His speeches, leadership, and calm demeanor help anchor the film's narrative, adding weight to the final conflict. Kingsley's portrayal in the movies is a testament to the filmmakers' ability to expand on characters in ways that deepen their impact on the story. In this sense, Kingsley Shacklebolt is one of the film series' unsung heroes, a character who, despite his relatively minor role in the books, is given the space to shine and inspire in the movies. His transformation into a leader of the wizarding world is a perfect example of how the films can enhance a character, turning them into a figure who not only serves the story, but elevates it. Number 19. Lily Potter. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, Lily Potter is a figure of mythic proportions. She is portrayed as the ideal mother, a brilliant witch who sacrificed her life to protect her son from the Dark Lord Voldemort. Yet despite her central importance in the narrative, Lily's presence in the books is largely indirect. Her character is more a collection of memories, stories, and second-hand accounts than an actual person we can interact with. We hear about her through Harry's recollections, through the memories of others like Sirius Black and Remus Lupin, and through the magical mirror that allows Harry to glimpse her face, but we don't really get to know her the way we do the other characters. This absence leaves a void, an idealized image of Lily that only exists through the lens of those who loved her. When the Harry Potter films were made, this lack of direct interaction with Lily as character became a challenge. How could the filmmakers bring her to life, especially given the emotional weight of her legacy? The answer came in the form of Geraldine Somerville's portrayal of Lily Potter. Somerville's performance in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and later in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2 transformed the character from a distant ideal into a figure of warmth, strength, and love. In the films, Lily's personality is presented with a depth that was only hinted at in the books. The films took what had been a mythic, ethereal figure and grounded her in reality, making her someone audiences could feel a genuine connection to. The most powerful of Lily's moments in the films is the one where she speaks directly to Harry through the magic of the Resurrection Stone. In that moment, Harry is overwhelmed with emotion, struggling with the enormity of the choices before him. Lily's voice, calm and reassuring, tells him, "Be brave." This line, though simple, becomes a profound moment in the narrative. It is a message that transcends the immediate circumstances of the story, one that speaks directly to Harry's heart, urging him to face his fears and do what must be done. The films captured this moment with such sincerity that it added a layer of emotional depth to Lily, as character that was largely absent in the books. While the written Lily was often seen only through Harry's fragmented memories, the cinematic Lily became real, vivid, and deeply human, giving the audience a glimpse of the love that had shaped Harry's life. In the books, Lily's love for Harry is central to the narrative, but it is something Harry experiences only through the stories and memories of others. We hear of her bravery, her intelligence, and her beauty, but we never truly witness her in action. We are told that she was the best of us, as Sirius Black puts it, but we never see her confront the dangers of the world she lived in. Instead, we know Lily only through Harry, as longing to understand her. She is a distant, mythic figure, forever frozen in time by her untimely death. Somerville's portrayal, however, brought a level of warmth and tangible presence to Lily that was impossible to convey through the books. In her brief appearances, Lily exudes both tenderness and strength. The actress took what could have been a simple, fleeting memory and turned it into something profoundly emotional. Her character's love for Harry is not just the love of a mother, it is a love that transcends death, a love that remains a guiding force throughout Harry's life. By showing Lily's gentleness but also her inner strength, Somerville's performance made Lily more than just a maternal figure. She became a symbol of hope, a light that Harry could always turn to, even in the darkest of times. One of the most poignant moments in the films is when Lily is shown sacrificing herself for Harry. In the books, we understand this act as a magical protection, an unbreakable charm that Voldemort cannot defeat. But in the films, this scene is given an added layer of meaning. Somerville Eost's portrayal of Lily during her final moments, her decision to protect her son at any cost, is filled with love and resolve. Her face is not one of fear, but one of absolute devotion to her son. The camera lingers on her as she stands between Harry and Voldemort, fully aware of the consequences yet unwavering in her determination. This scene, though tragic, highlights Lily's courage and the depth of her love in a way that the books, in their more detached narrative style, could not. Lily's character is also defined by her relationship with James Potter, her husband. In the books, we know that Lily and James were both highly respected members of the Order of the Phoenix, brave and loyal in their fight against Voldemort. Yet, much of their relationship is left to the imagination. We hear of their youthful passion and their shared ideals, but we never truly see the dynamic between them. In the films, however, Lily and James are brought to life in a more tangible way. We witness their love for each other through the brief scenes where they are together. The tenderness between them is palpable, and it helps to further flesh out Lily's character. We see her as not just a mother, but also as a wife, a partner in the fight against the dark forces that threatened their world. Through these moments, the films humanize Lily, making her more relatable to the audience. While Lily's role in the books is largely confined to memories and second-hand accounts, the films allowed her to transcend this limitation. Through Somerville's nuanced performance, Lily becomes more than just a memory of Harry. She becomes a real, living presence that continues to influence the course of the story. Her love for Harry is no longer something abstract or idealized. It is something concrete and deeply felt. It is a love that shapes Harry's journey, guiding him even when he doesn't realize it. There is also a certain mythic quality to Lily's character in the books. She is often described as the epitome of goodness and grace, someone whose sacrifice has forever marked the wizarding world. But this mythic portrayal can also make her feel distant, like a figure from a legend rather than a real person. In the films, however, Somerville's portrayal of Lily added a level of relatability to the character. The tenderness and strength she displayed made Lily feel like someone we could all recognize, someone whose love and sacrifice we could understand on a personal level. Lily became less of a distant myth and more of a human being, someone whose actions and choices shaped the lives of those around her. In many ways, Lily's character in the films serves as a counterpoint to Harry's own development. While Harry struggles with the legacy of his parents' death, Lily's presence, albeit brief, reminds him of the love and protection that still surrounds him. Her influence is not limited to the past. It is something that continues to shape Harry's decisions in the present. In the moments when Lily speaks to him, whether through the resurrection stone or through the memories of others, she serves as a reminder of the power of love to overcome even the darkest forces. Her character embodies the idea that love is a force that transcends time and death, a theme that runs throughout the entire Harry Potter series. The films, then, succeed in giving Lily a depth and complexity that the books could only hint at. Through Somerville's performance, Lily becomes more than just a martyr or a distant memory. She becomes a figure of real emotional weight, whose love for Harry is not just a plot device but a powerful and enduring presence throughout the story. The films took what was essentially a mythic character and grounded her in the reality of the film's world, making her a more tangible human presence in Harry's life. Through her, we see not just the idealized image of a mother's love, but the strength and sacrifice that come with it. Lily's character, as portrayed by Geraldine Somerville, is one of the most moving aspects of the Harry Potter films, and it is a portrayal that added a layer of emotional richness to the story that the books could only hint at. Number 20, Dolores Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge, the unsettling antagonist of the Harry Potter series, stands as a prime example of how a character can be transformed in a film adaptation to not only appear more frightening but also embody a kind of authoritarian horror that goes far beyond what the book version of the character conveyed. In J.K. Rowling's novels, Umbridge is indeed a grotesque figure, petty, malicious, and unjust. But in the films, under the direction of David Yates and the chilling portrayal by Imelda Staunton, she takes on a far more sinister and oppressive air. She becomes not just a cruel school administrator, but a personification of tyranny itself, a concept so vivid and disturbing that audiences almost revel in their hatred of her. The books introduced Dolores Umbridge as the Ministry of Magic's appointee to Hogwarts, ostensibly to bring order and discipline to the school, but in reality to quash any opposition to the ministry's policies. Her methods are draconian, from enforcing ridiculous rules to punishing students with the blood quill, an instrument that forces them to write lines that scar their skin as deeply as they are etched into their minds. In the novels, Umbridge is written as someone who combines the worst traits of an incompetent bureaucrat and a petty tyrant. Her love of control, her insistence on conformity, and her inability to understand the deeper moral implications of her actions make her a distasteful yet relatively straightforward villain. However, when Imelda Staunton steps into the role of Umbridge in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the character is transformed. Staunton's portrayal brings an added layer of menace to an already horrible figure. She's no longer just a symbol of oppressive authority. She becomes its embodiment, her every smile a tool of manipulation, and her every word laced with the cold, mechanical logic of someone who believes their actions, no matter how cruel, are justified. The visual and vocal choices Staunton makes breathe new life into the character, making her more disturbing and much harder to ignore than her book counterpart. From the very first time Umbridge steps into the frame, the audience is struck by her incongruous, almost comical appearance. In the films, she wears pink, the colour of sweetness and kindness, and her office is decorated with cap plates and doilies, a bizarre contrast to her actions. These harmless details, however, only serve to amplify the twisted nature of her tyranny. The film uses these contrasting visuals to deepen the impact of her character. The pastel pinks of her outfits and the cutesy decor juxtaposed against her cruel, authoritarian actions heighten the horror she represents. She is a villain who hides behind the trappings of femininity and gentleness, a veneer that makes her cruelty all the more unsettling. Imelda Staunton's interpretation of Umbridge is so captivating because she finds an unsettling balance between sweetness and malice. Her voice, at first, seems like a sugary lullaby, a pitch-perfect portrayal of a woman who is so convinced of her own righteousness that she delivers her harshest punishments in the gentlest tones. Staunton's smile, which never quite reaches her eyes, adds another layer of terror to the character. The result is that Umbridge is not simply someone you hate for what she does, but someone who makes your skin crawl with the way she does it. In one of the most iconic moments from Order of the Phoenix, Umbridge forces Harry Potter to use the blood quill as a punishment for his defiance. The book describes the pain and the horror of the experience, but it's the way this scene is handled in the film that takes it to an even more unsettling level. The camera focuses on Staunton's impassive face as she watches Harry writhe in agony. Her smile remains fixed, serene, and yet chillingly devoid of empathy. This scene encapsulates everything about the film. As Umbridge, she is the kind of villain who thrives on the suffering of others, not out of personal malice, but because she believes it is part of the order she is supposed to impose on the world. While the books certainly make Umbridge despicable, it is through Staunton's performance that she becomes not just a tyrant, but an archetype of the worst kinds of totalitarian figures. The film portrays her as a symbol of state-sanctioned cruelty, her ultimate weapon being not just the physical pain she inflicts, but the psychological control she wields over the students and faculty of Hogwarts. It is in the minutiae of her character that the depth of her power lies, her ability to turn the school into a place where fear and compliance are valued more than freedom and knowledge. Through her eyes, every act of defiance becomes an affront to the order she is creating, and every act of cruelty is justified as part of that greater good. What makes Umbridge in the film so effective as an antagonist is the way she mirrors historical figures who cloak their brutality in a facade of civility. Staunton's performance transforms her from a mere plot device into an embodiment of authoritarianism, showing how easily someone can use power to manipulate and control, all while maintaining the pretense of benevolence. Her character taps into a deeper societal fear, the fear of a world where those in power believe they are justified in imposing their will, regardless of the harm it causes to others. One of the key elements that makes Staunton's portrayal of Umbridge so compelling is her ability to show the character complete disregard for the suffering of others. In her performance, there is no moment of vulnerability, no flicker of doubt, just an ironclad certainty in her mission. This detachment from the pain she causes is part of what makes Umbridge so terrifying. She isn't a villain who is driven by personal vendettas or a thirst for power. Instead, she is a personification of a system that views people as tools to be used, punished, or disposed of when necessary. It's this chilling indifference to the humanity of others that makes Umbridge one of the most terrifying figures in the Harry Potter universe. Even when Umbridge is removed from her position of power, the film does not let the audience forget the extent of her influence. In the final moments of Order of the Phoenix, she is left humiliated and defeated, but the damage she has done lingers. Her legacy is felt in the way she has warped the minds of those around her, forcing them to accept tyranny as a fact of life. The film ends with the sense that even though Umbridge has been removed from power, the structures she represents are still very much in place, lurking in the shadows of the wizarding world. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Umbridge's transformation from the book to the film is how her character taps into a universal fear of oppression. In the books, her cruelty is more localized, but in the films it becomes a more potent symbol of the dangers of unchecked authority. Her role in Order of the Phoenix is not just about the conflict between Harry and the Ministry of Magic, it's about the larger battle between freedom and control, between resistance and submission. Her character serves as a reminder of what can happen when power is wielded by those who care more about their own agenda than the welfare of others. Dolores Umbridge's transformation from a book villain into a cinematic icon is a testament to the power of film to enhance and deepen a character's impact. Through Imelda Staunton's nuanced performance, Umbridge becomes not just a symbol of petty bureaucratic evil, but a chilling figure who reminds us of the dangers of authoritarianism, blind obedience, and the terrifying potential for cruelty in the name of order. Through her, the Harry Potter films illustrate that sometimes the most dangerous villains are those who smile while they destroy everything in their path. Number 21, Bellatrix Lestrange in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. Bellatrix Lestrange is introduced as one of the most notorious and fanatical Death Eaters, fiercely devoted to Lord Voldemort. Her character in the books is depicted as psychotically loyal to the Dark Lord, with a particular sadistic streak that runs through her every action. However, Bellatrix's portrayal on screen, especially by Helena Bonham Carter, reveals a much more dynamic and captivating presence, one that transcends the one-dimensional role she plays in the books. In the films, Bellatrix emerges as a character of chaos, unpredictability, and disturbing allure, making her one of the saga's most memorable and terrifying antagonists. In the original novels, Bellatrix serves as an example of the madness that can overtake someone who has fully embraced the dark arts. While she is undeniably a killer, a fanatic, and a servant to Voldemort, she is also often depicted as an irrational force. For most of her appearances, Bellatrix is simply one of many Death Eaters, but her extreme devotion to Voldemort, often expressed in exaggerated and dangerous ways, renders her a unique threat. For example, when she tortures Hermione Granger in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, her cruelty is almost mindlessly amplified. Quote 41. She jeers as she uses the Cruciatus Curse, her anger a reflection of her twisted devotion to pure blood ideology. Yet despite these moments of terror, Bellatrix's character often feels like a stereotype of a villain, the embodiment of evil for evil's sake. There is no real exploration of why she is this way beyond her extreme loyalty to Voldemort. Her obsession with him and her unhinged personality remain largely unexplained, leading her to be perceived as little more than a madwoman without much depth. Her appearance in the books lacks the layers of complexity that many other characters, particularly the central figures like Harry, Hermione, or Snape, receive. However, in the films, Helena Bonham Carter's portrayal of Bellatrix breathes life into the character in a way that was scarcely possible in the books. From the first time she appears on screen in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, her performance is anything but restrained. Carter infuses Bellatrix with an air of manic energy, a wildness that is both captivating and terrifying. She is not merely a fanatical follower of Voldemort, she is the very embodiment of chaos, unpredictable in every way. Her manic laughter, her erratic movements, and the glint of madness in her eyes immediately set her apart from the other Death Eaters. One of the most striking elements of Carter's Bellatrix is her ability to fuse terror with theatricality. Unlike many of the other Death Eaters who often seem cold and calculating, Bellatrix is a force of nature, unpredictable and often childlike in her madness. She delights in her own cruelty and her sense of joy during the most grotesque moments, such as when she gleefully tortures Hermione or mocks Harry in Deathly Hallows, adds a level of discomfort that is difficult to ignore. The infamous scene where she kills Sirius Black is a prime example of how Carter is Bellatrix turns villainy into a theatrical performance. As Sirius falls through the veil, Bellatrix, delighted, cackling, fills the room, turning what should be a moment of grief into an unsettling spectacle. Her smile as she watches her cousin's death unfold is as disturbing as it is unforgettable. This chaotic energy is particularly evident in her interactions with Voldemort. In the books, Bellatrix's loyalty to him is unshakable, but this devotion is often expressed through a kind of fanatical reverence that feels almost hollow. In the films, Carter's performance transforms this loyalty into something far more visceral. Bellatrix's obsession with Voldemort is not just ideological, but emotional, a desperate need to please and be validated by the Dark Lord. This desperation, which Carter conveys with fervor, makes Bellatrix's devotion feel less like an intellectual allegiance and more like an emotional compulsion. Her whole being seems to tremble with the desire to serve Voldemort, and her portrayal is, at times, almost tragic in its intensity. She is not merely evil, she is obsessed, unhinged, and devoted to a fault. Bellatrix's appearance in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince further enhances her status as a villain in the cinematic universe. The scene in which she escapes from Azkaban is another shining example of how Carter elevates the character from a mere villain to an iconic cinematic figure. The moment when Bellatrix breaks free, cackling and reveling in her newfound freedom, is a masterpiece of chaotic energy. Her wild, disheveled appearance, combined with the delight she takes in her own destruction, makes her a character of immense power and danger. She is no longer just a pawn of Voldemort, she is a force in her own right, an unpredictable whirlwind of destruction. What makes Bellatrix such a compelling character in the films is the sense of theatricality that Carter brings to her role. From her wild costumes to her exaggerated expressions, Bellatrix feels like a character straight out of a Gothic opera. Her movements are deliberately over the top, her laugh unmistakable, and her every word feels charged with manic energy. Bellatrix is not a mere follower of Voldemort, she is a diva of destruction, an actress playing the part of a villain to perfection. In this sense, Bellatrix becomes an icon of evil not only within the world of Harry Potter, but also in cinematic history, her portrayal standing out in the sea of other villainous characters. But it is not just Bellatrix's chaotic energy and devotion to Voldemort that makes her such a fascinating antagonist. There is something deeply unsettling about her relationship with her family, particularly her niece, Narcissa Malfoy. In Deathly Hallows, the contrast between the two women is striking. Narcissa, despite her own loyalties to Voldemort, still shows a measure of maternal love and humanity that Bellatrix lacks entirely. Bellatrix's complete lack of empathy for anyone, even those she is related to, is a stark reflection of her deep-seated madness. This chilling detachment, combined with her maniacal passion, makes Bellatrix one of the most frightening characters in the entire saga. The visual design of Bellatrix in the films also enhances her status as an iconic villain. Her dark, flowing hair, her sharp, angular features, and her Gothic attire all combine to create a striking visual image that reinforces her chaotic nature. Unlike many of the other characters in Harry Potter, Bellatrix does not conform to traditional ideas of beauty or elegance. Instead, she is a wild, untamed force, a visual manifestation of the disorder she represents. In this way, Her appearance is an extension of her personality, a chaotic, unsettling figure who cannot be tamed or controlled. Ultimately, Bellatrix's cinematic evolution from a one-dimensional villain to an unforgettable icon is a testament to the power of acting and character development. While the book version of Bellatrix remains a memorable but relatively simplistic antagonist, the film portrayal elevates her to a level of complexity and presence that cannot be ignored. Helena Bonham Carter's portrayal imbues Bellatrix with a sense of madness, passion, and chaos that makes her one of the most terrifying and compelling characters in the Harry Potter universe. The films gave Bellatrix a life and energy that her literary counterpart never fully realized, transforming her from a mere servant of Voldemort into one of the most iconic villains in modern cinema. Number 22, Tom Riddle, young Voldemort. In the books, Tom Riddle, or young Voldemort, is a character who lives more in the realm of the imagination than the tangible world. He is a cold and calculating individual, one whose ability to manipulate and control is far more sinister than anything outwardly visible. His cruelty and lack of empathy are a quiet presence, lurking behind every move he makes. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, Riddle's character is described in a way that evokes fear, not because of what he does in the moment, but because of the monstrous potential that his future self promises. The young Riddle, especially in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, is a distant figure, a shadow of the terror he will eventually become, and yet it is precisely this disembodied fear that makes him such a compelling villain. Riddle's manipulation is something that happens mostly out of sight, leaving the reader to infer his true nature through the actions and reactions of those around him. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Harry learns that Tom Riddle was once an exceptionally gifted student, but his gifts were used not for good, but for the pursuit of power. Riddle's success in manipulating others in his youth can be seen as a precursor to the ruthless dictator he would one day become. However, these traits are often not displayed directly on the page. Rather, they are hinted at through descriptions of his ability to charm and deceive. In essence, young Tom Riddle is more of a terrifying idea than an actual presence. It is the result of his evil deeds, rather than their performance, that fills the reader with dread. The films, on the other hand, bring a more visceral, immediate understanding of Tom Riddle. Is evil through the embodiment of the character by actor Frank Delane. His portrayal of young Tom Riddle in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince elevates the character from something abstract into something very real, very present. Delane's performance allows Riddle's charisma and sinister charm to come to life in a way that is far more tangible than what the books manage. His performance, marked by an unsettling calmness and a glimmer of malice in his eyes, infuses Riddle with a presence that lingers. Riddle in the films is no longer just a figure to fear based on his potential. He is a character whose dark personality is laid bare before the audience, no longer something to be inferred. In the Half-Blood Prince film, the very first time we meet Tom Riddle as a young man, we are struck by the coldness that emanates from him. Delane's portrayal gives Riddle an unnerving stillness, a smoothness to his movements that betrays his inner darkness. When we first see him in the orphanage, we see a quiet, almost controlled boy who holds his power in check, but reveals enough to make others tremble. His physicality, especially in scenes where he approaches Harry, adds to the portrayal of Riddle as someone who can bend others to his will simply by the force of his presence. There is a moment in the scene where Riddle is in front of the school governors when his cool and detached manner is so chilling that one cannot help but feel the distance between this young man and his peers. In the book, this moment is somewhat diluted by the passage of time and Harry's retrospective view of it, but in the film, the camera lingers on Riddle's face, his eyes cold and calculating. This allows the audience to grasp his power instantly. The film's portrayal of Riddle goes beyond mere manipulation. It captures a deep-seated dread, something visceral that the books could only hint at. In The Half-Blood Prince, Riddle is more than a manipulative, gifted student. He is a dangerous and haunting presence. In particular, the scene where Harry first sees Riddle through the pensieve allows us to feel Riddle's allure and danger firsthand. There is no longer a barrier between the reader's imagination and the visual portrayal of Riddle's evil. We watch as Riddle makes his mark, casting aside any notions of morality or empathy as he starts to shape the world around him into a place where he can reign supreme. Delane's portrayal brings Riddle's intelligence to life with such gravitas that it transforms the character from a mere story into something far more tangible. The character of young Riddle is not only about being a manipulator, he becomes an individual with an almost magnetic pull, drawing others into his orbit without them realizing the danger they are in. This is evident in the scene where he convinces Slughorn to tell him about Horcruxes. Riddle's cool demeanor and polite, respectful tone hide his true intentions, creating an atmosphere of discomfort and unease. The film captures this beautifully with the pacing and the way Riddle is framed in the shot, always calm, always in control, but exuding an underlying malevolence. One of the most notable aspects of Delane's portrayal is how it captures Riddle as a gradual descent into the darkness that would later define Voldemort. In the books, Riddle's evilness is portrayed in a way that doesn't allow the reader to fully comprehend the extent of his depravity until later, but in the films, the visual representation of the young Tom Riddle builds over time. The change in his appearance, from the charming and clean-cut orphan to the gaunt, serpentine figure of Voldemort, is something that is shown through the transformation of the actor portrayal, particularly in the way the character, his voice and demeanor evolve. Delane's portrayal emphasizes the chilling calmness that Riddle would one day wield as Voldemort. His steady and assured tone in conversations, juxtaposed with the malicious undertone in his eyes, is a subtle but powerful indicator of the character's darker path. By showcasing these aspects of Tom Riddle's character, the films provide an emotional depth to his journey that is less pronounced in the books. The visual and atmospheric choices in the Half-Blood Prince film play a crucial role in bringing Riddle to life as a fully realized, horrifying presence. The way the camera captures him in tight, shadowed frames, often with an expression that never quite betrays his emotions, creates an almost unbearable tension. Through Delane's performance, we see a young man whose charm and intelligence are paired with a frightening lack of morality. His gaze, steady and unyielding, seems to look right through those around him, suggesting that his ultimate goal is far beyond what most people could comprehend. It is this visual portrayal that makes him a more immediate threat than the more distant, enigmatic character we encounter in the books. The young Voldemort is no longer just a name in a story. He is someone you can feel in your bones. and his presence lingers long after the scene is over. The transformation of Tom Riddle into the villainous Voldemort is not just about physical change, but about how he becomes an embodiment of fear itself. The films provide a stronger understanding of how Riddle's charm and manipulation are weapons, how he uses them not merely to gain power, but to control and break others. His beauty and youth are an illusion, a carefully constructed facade that hides his true nature. In this sense, Riddle is much more menacing in the films, where his personality and actions are vividly brought to life rather than left to the reader's imagination. The depiction of Tom Riddle in the films, particularly in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, adds layers of complexity and dread to a character who is in the books, by necessity, somewhat removed from the reader's direct experience. Riddle's cold charm and his ability to manipulate others are better felt when we can see him, hear him, and feel the dark energy he exudes. Delane's performance, combined with the film's dark atmosphere, gives us a visual and emotional connection to the character that the books, for all their mastery, can only suggest. As such, the character of Tom Riddle in the films is a more immediate, more chilling figure, one whose actions and ambitions can no longer be overlooked or ignored. He is no longer merely a shadow on the horizon. He is a force to be reckoned with. Number 23, Horace Slughorn. Horace Slughorn is a character whose cinematic portrayal in the Harry Potter films offers a striking contrast to his portrayal in J.K. Rowling's books. In the novels, Slughorn is often seen as a slightly comedic figure, a man who collects students like rare stamps, drawing them into his web with charm and flattery. He is an enigmatic character, yes, with moments of genuine warmth, but he also comes across as somewhat shallow, craven, and self-serving. His actions are often dictated by self-interest and fear, especially when it comes to his relationship with power and influence. But the film adaptation, particularly through the performance of Jim Broadbent, breathes new life into Slughorn, transforming him from a caricature into a deeply human and emotionally resonant character. Slughorn's role in the books is one of subtle manipulation, and his motivations seem primarily based on his desire to associate with the famous and the powerful. He handpicks students to be part of his, actual quote, 50, a collection of young minds he deems worthy of his personal attention. These students aren't just chosen for their talents, but also for their connections and their potential to rise in the world. Slughorn's obsession with these students is less about their well-being and more about how they reflect his own self-importance. In the novels, he is portrayed as a man with a certain charm, but his character is defined by an undercurrent of cowardice, particularly when it comes to standing up against Voldemort and the Death Eaters. However, the Slughorn we encounter in the films, embodied by Jim Broadbent, feels far more fleshed out and multifaceted. When we first meet him in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, he is not merely a man concerned with his own legacy or the continuation of his prestigious, to quote, 51. Instead, we are introduced to a man who has aged with a sense of regret and loss, haunted by the mistakes of his past. In the films, his charisma is still present, but it is no longer used as a tool for manipulation. It becomes a window into his complexity, a man who wants to protect his students from the harsh realities of the world, but is also too afraid to confront those same realities himself. One of the most powerful moments in the film adaptation is Slughorn's monologue about Lily Potter, Harry's mother. This scene stands in stark contrast to the rather one-dimensional portrayal of Slughorn in the book. In the novel, Slughorn's emotions about Lily Potter are mostly expressed through fleeting mentions and a vague sense of nostalgia. We never really see his guilt or regret over the role he played in the tragic events surrounding Lily's death. But in the film, Broadbent's Slughorn gives a performance that turns this moment into one of the most emotionally charged in the entire series. The depth of emotion Slughorn displays in the film is far more palpable than in the books. As he recounts his memory of Lily, we see a man who is torn between his admiration for her and his guilt over the fact that he never acted when it truly mattered. Slughorn's remorse is not simply because Lily was taken from the world, but because he never truly understood the depth of her sacrifice or the gravity of her choices. It is this guilt that makes him hesitant when Harry asks him about the memory, but it also gives Slughorn a sense of authenticity and humanity that was less prominent in the books. He is no longer a simple, comical figure hiding behind a facade of self-interest. He becomes someone who has made mistakes, regrets them, and longs for redemption. In the film, Slughorn's fear is also much more evident. His earlier portrayal in the book suggests that he is a coward, particularly when faced with the darker elements of the wizarding world. He is quick to abandon his post at Hogwarts when the Death Eaters rise to power, and his attempts to distance himself from the conflict show a lack of moral courage. While these elements are present in the film, they are depicted with a certain poignancy. When Slughorn talks about the fear he felt during the rise of Voldemort, his voice shakes with vulnerability, and we understand that his fear was not just about protecting his own life, it was about being forced to make choices that would reveal his own moral weaknesses. In the books, Slughorn's connection to the Death Eaters is primarily an intellectual one. He associates with them not out of any ideological commitment, but because of his desire to be in the presence of power. He is drawn to those who can help him achieve his goals, regardless of the ethical implications. This makes him somewhat of a morally grey figure. He is neither good nor evil, but is primarily concerned with his own safety and prosperity. However, the film takes this idea and gives it a much deeper emotional resonance. In Half-Blood Prince, when Slughorn talks about his decision to go into hiding, we see a man who feels the weight of his choices, who feels guilty about the alliances he formed and the decisions he made in the past. This portrayal adds a layer of regret to his character that makes him more relatable and, ultimately, more sympathetic. The humanizing of Slughorn in the films also makes his moments of kindness stand out more. In the books, Slughorn's acts of kindness toward Harry and others are often seen as self-serving, as though he is only helping others to create a sense of obligation or to secure future favors. But Jim Broadbent's performance gives these moments a sense of sincerity. When Slughorn offers Harry advice or when he helps him with the memory, it feels like a genuine attempt to right past wrongs rather than an opportunistic gesture. This shift in his character makes Slughorn's eventual role in the battle against Voldemort more meaningful, as he no longer comes across as just another member of the wizarding elite looking out for himself. Instead, he is a man who has recognized the importance of standing up for what is right, even if it means facing the consequences of his past actions. The transformation of Slughorn from a somewhat superficial character into a fully realized, emotionally complex figure is one of the most notable improvements the film adaptation made to the character. The books, with their focus on the plot and the sweeping adventure of the wizarding world, didn't always allow for the kind of deep character development that the films did. By allowing Jim Broadbent to bring his own emotional depth to the role, the filmmakers created a version of Slughorn who feels more real, more human, and more relatable than the character in the books. Perhaps the most significant difference between the two versions of Slughorn is the way he is able to express his guilt and fear. In the films, we see him confront his past, face the consequences of his actions, and ultimately find a measure of redemption. This gives Slughorn a sense of agency that is absent in the books. He is no longer just a passive observer of events, waiting to see how things unfold. He becomes an active participant in the fight against Voldemort, a character who has learned from his mistakes and is willing to do what he can to make things right. This shift in Slughorn as character is one of the most powerful aspects of the film adaptation and a testament to the skill of both the filmmakers and Jim Broadbent. In the end, the film's portrayal of Horace Slughorn gives the character the emotional depth and complexity that the books only hinted at. Through the performance of Jim Broadbent, Slughorn is transformed from a figure of comic relief into a fully realized character, one whose actions and motivations are driven by a deep sense of fear, regret, and ultimately, humanity. His journey from self-interest to selflessness mirrors the larger themes of the series, making him not just a memorable character, but also an essential part of the story, the emotional core. Number 24. Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin, a beloved character in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, holds a special place in the hearts of fans, yet his portrayal in the films enhanced his humanity in ways that the books only hinted at. The films, particularly in the portrayal by David Thewlis, made Lupin warmer, more relatable, and deeply human. While in the books Lupin is portrayed as wise and reserved, occasionally distant, especially in the later chapters, the movie adaptation brought forth a version of him that felt more like a mentor, a reliable figure, and a person who wore his emotional scars openly. His depiction in the films softened the edges of his character, making him more accessible and universally beloved. In the Harry Potter books, Remus Lupin is an incredibly complex character. He is an intelligent and kind-hearted wizard who was a loyal member of the Marauders, a group of friends who were deeply connected in their youth. However, his life is marked by tragedy. Lupin is a werewolf, and this aspect of his identity is one that he struggles to accept and reconcile. In the novels, we learn about his condition gradually, with bits and pieces revealed through conversations and subtle hints. The consequences of being a werewolf, from societal rejection to the painful transformations, shape his character in profound ways. His wisdom comes from this experience, yet at times there is a sense of detachment in his demeanor. This distance is especially visible as he becomes more withdrawn in the final chapters, perhaps as a response to the burdens of his past. Lupin's wisdom is not without its flaws. His decisions sometimes lack clarity, and his interactions with others, particularly with Harry in the later books, seem more distant. He is a character who carries his burdens quietly, but that burden can sometimes make him appear aloof, making it difficult for those around him to fully understand him. His complexity as a character is shown in moments when he withdraws from those who care about him, afraid that his own darkness might hurt them. For example, in The Prisoner of Azkaban, he refrains from sharing his full story with Harry and his friends, believing that his condition will only bring harm to those who care about him. He expresses this in his words, but more than that, his actions speak volumes of his inner turmoil. This deep emotional undercurrent is often felt in the books, but it is not always easy to grasp. The film adaptation, however, brought a different layer to Lupin's character. In the hands of director Alfonso Cuarón and the performance of David Thewlis, Remus Lupin was given an emotional depth that was missing in the original text. Thewlis played Lupin with a subtle delicacy that was in stark contrast to the gruffness of other characters. His portrayal in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is nothing short of masterful. The scenes between Lupin and Harry carry an emotional weight that was only partially conveyed in the books. Lupin's kindness and understanding shine through in his every interaction with Harry, especially in moments where he serves as both a teacher and a father figure. The warmth in his eyes, the quiet but reassuring tone of his voice, and the way he carries the weight of his past with such grace create a character who feels more human than the one written on the pages. One of the most poignant scenes in the film occurs when Lupin takes Harry aside to speak with him about the dangers of the Marauder's map. In the book, this moment is significant but brief. Lupin's reasons for keeping the secret from Harry are more calculated, less emotional. In the film, however, there is a warmth in Lupin's actions. His concern for Harry is palpable, and it is clear that he genuinely cares for him as a mentor. Thewlis's portrayal adds layers of tenderness and sorrow, showing a man who is not just a teacher, but someone who understands the pain of loss and abandonment. When Lupin speaks to Harry about the map, he does so with a sense of responsibility, not just as a teacher, but as a mentor who has lived through his own painful experiences and does not wish the same for Harry. What made Thewlis's portrayal so special was his ability to convey Lupin as internal struggle without the need for extensive dialogue. In the film, Lupin's moments of vulnerability are often conveyed through his eyes, his posture, and his quiet actions. Thewlis gave Lupin an authenticity that was missing in the book. His performance made Lupin more than just a wise, enigmatic figure. He became a character who not only gave guidance, but also sought it for himself. He was not an infallible mentor, but a flawed man who, despite his imperfections, always did his best to help Harry. This sense of vulnerability was not present in the books to the same degree. While Lupin's wisdom and care for Harry were evident, his own struggles were often more muted, kept at arm's length from the reader. In addition to his mentorship of Harry, Lupin's relationship with other characters also felt more grounded in the films. His friendships with Sirius Black and James Potter were brought to life with more emotional depth. In the book, we see Lupin as a man who has lost many friends and carries the weight of those losses with him. The films did an excellent job of showcasing these relationships, particularly in the flashback scenes to the Marauders' time at Hogwarts. The moments in The Prisoner of Azkaban where Lupin recalls his friendship with Sirius, James and Peter Pettigrew are given more emotional resonance in the film thanks to Thewlis's ability to convey grief and nostalgia through his performance. Thewlis's Lupin is a man who, despite his suffering, cherishes the memories of his youth and his friends. In the later films, Lupin's character continues to evolve, with the addition of his relationship with Nymphadora Tonks and their son. While this development is not as extensively explored in the books, the films allow us to see Lupin as a man who, despite his fear of passing on his lycanthropy to his child, is deeply in love and determined to make a life with Tonks. This shift in Lupin's character from the solitary figure of the earlier films to a more settled, loving father is a crucial part of his evolution. The films give us a sense of Lupin's humanity that the books only hinted at, making him a more complete and relatable figure. What is perhaps most striking about Lupin's film portrayal is how it highlights the theme of acceptance. In the books, Lupin struggles with his condition, feeling unworthy of love and friendship because of his werewolf status. The films expand on this theme, showing Lupin as a man who, despite his insecurities and fears, learns to accept his own humanity. This transformation is most evident in his relationship with Tonks, where he comes to understand that his condition does not define him or make him any less deserving of love. This acceptance, especially as Lupin becomes a father, adds a layer of hope to his character that was more subdued in the books. Ultimately, it is the films that truly brought Lupin, his humanity, to the forefront, emphasizing not just his wisdom and compassion, but also his flaws, his pain, and his growth. David Thewlis's portrayal made Lupin a character who was more than just a mentor or a teacher. He became a symbol of what it means to be human, flawed, struggling, but always capable of love and growth. In the books, Lupin's humanity is present, but the films made it shine in a way that resonated deeply with audiences. They gave Lupin a warmth and depth that made him a character everyone could relate to, making his tragic end all the more heartbreaking. Number 25, Molly Weasley. Molly Weasley, the loving matriarch of the Weasley family, is a character who embodies the essence of a caring mother in the Harry Potter series. However, her portrayal in the films gives her an extra layer of complexity and depth, transforming her from a warm, maternal figure into a fierce and formidable warrior. In J.K. Rowling's books, Molly is often seen as the nurturing mother, the one who looks after everyone around her with a fierce sense of protectiveness. She is often the one to offer comfort to Harry and Ron to make sure that no one goes hungry and that everyone feels safe in her home. But it's in the films, particularly in the final battle of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, that Molly's character truly comes into her own as something more than just the, quote, 59 of the group. In the books, Molly is portrayed as an exceptional mother, caring, kind-hearted, and full of love for her own children, as well as for Harry, who she has taken under her wing as her own. Her protective nature comes through time and time again. In The Philosopher's Stone, she fusses over Harry as if he were one of her own, making sure he has everything he needs. In The Chamber of Secrets, she is the one who ensures Harry and Ron's safety after their disastrous trip to the Burrow in the flying car. But it is in the films that we truly see Molly. His maternal strength expand into something more powerful, something that would forever change the way viewers would see her. When we first meet Molly in the films, she is portrayed by actress Julie Walters as a warm and welcoming figure, always ready to offer a smile and a hug. Her motherly love for her children is evident from the start. Yet as the series progresses, we see her character take on a more dynamic role. She's not just the ever-supportive mother, she is also a fierce protector, someone who will fight with all her might to keep those she loves safe. One of the most iconic moments that solidifies this transformation comes in The Deathly Hallows Part 2 during the Battle of Hogwarts. The moment when Molly Weasley faces off against Bellatrix Lestrange is one of the most memorable scenes in the entire film series. As the battle rages around them, Molly's focus is solely on protecting her family. When Bellatrix, who has been terrorizing the battlefield with her sadistic laughter, turns her attention to Ginny, Molly's protective instincts snap into overdrive. The words that she shouts in the heat of the moment, "Not my daughter, you bitch!" are more than just an outburst of anger. They are the culmination of everything Molly has been through as a mother and a protector. In this moment, she becomes more than just the doting mom. She becomes a force to be reckoned with. The impact of this moment is not only in the raw emotion of it, but in the way the filmmakers chose to show Molly his strength. Unlike the books, where her fight against Bellatrix is portrayed more in passing, the film gives this moment an extra layer of grandeur and importance. In the films, we see Molly as not just a mother, but as a warrior who is willing to fight and die to protect her loved ones. It is an empowering scene where she does not hesitate to take down one of the deadliest witches in the wizarding world. In this battle, Molly has more than proven herself. She is a hero in her own right. The contrast between Molly's maternal softness and her warrior strength is what makes her such a compelling character in the films. Throughout the series, she has been the one to provide comfort and refuge for Harry and his friends, but in the final film, she reveals that she is not just a passive figure waiting for others to protect her family. She is capable of taking control of the situation and defending those she loves without a second thought. The way the film depicts Molly's transformation from a mother into a powerful fighter highlights the complexity of her character. She is both gentle and fierce, nurturing and strong, traits that are rarely shown in such a dynamic way for female characters in films. In the book, Molly's fighting abilities are not as emphasized. While she is clearly a talented witch, capable of using advanced spells, it is not until the final book that we truly see her in action during the battle. The film, however, amplifies her role, allowing her to stand out as one of the heroes of the Battle of Hogwarts. The filmmakers carefully crafted the scene in a way that ensures Molly is not only remembered for her kindness, but also for her strength and bravery. It is a remarkable shift that showcases the evolution of her character in the cinematic world. What is most striking about Molly's transformation in the films is the way it subverts traditional expectations of female characters. In many stories, the mother figure is often relegated to the background, serving only as a source of emotional support for the hero. Molly, however, is not simply a bystander. She is central to the fight, taking on the role of protector, not only for her children, but for the entire wizarding world. In the film, she proves that women can be both nurturing and powerful, showing that being a mother does not mean you have to give up being a fighter. Her character challenges the stereotypical roles often assigned to women in film, and in doing so, she becomes an inspiring figure. Beyond the battle with Bellatrix, Molly's character is shown to have grown over the course of the films. In The Half-Blood Prince, we see Molly as fears about her children, safety, and her worries about the war taking its toll on their family. She is deeply affected by the loss of her friends and allies, but her love for her family never wavers. She's a strong, unwavering presence in their lives, even as the danger around them escalates. Her strength in the face of adversity is a testament to the resilience of her character. It is easy to forget how much she sacrifices for the safety of others. Her home is constantly a refuge for Harry and his friends. Her time and energy are spent caring for them, and she is always ready to lend a helping hand when needed. Yet despite all the sacrifices she makes, it is her love for her family that keeps her going. What is particularly powerful about Molly's character arc in the films is how it mirrors the broader theme of motherhood throughout the series. Molly, like many of the other characters, represents the idea that love is the greatest weapon against darkness. Her determination to protect her children and her loved ones is not just a personal mission. It is a reflection of the core values that drive the entire wizarding world to fight against the forces of evil. Molly's character, particularly in the films, demonstrates that it is not just the grand acts of heroism that make a difference, but the small, everyday acts of love and courage that can have the most profound impact. In the end, Molly Weasley's journey from a caring mother to a fierce warrior is one of the most compelling aspects of the Harry Potter films. Her transformation showcases the strength that can come from love and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her children. By elevating Molly's character to such heroic heights, the films ensure that she is remembered not only as a mother, but as a warrior who will go to any lengths to protect those she loves. The addition of this depth to her character is one of the many ways the films improved upon the portrayal of beloved characters, giving them more complexity and resonance than what was originally found in the books.